Mr. Krabs took off his own shell, then crawled into a box to enjoy a sauna, getting ready for his date that night. At that moment, he had no idea that this would be the decision he regretted most in his entire life. When SpongeBob saw that there was only his shell in the room, he thought Mr. Krabs had died. SpongeBob was very sad. Squidward pointed out that Mr. Krabs still had a date with Mrs. Puff. He and Patrick decided to protect Mr. Krabs' love life. So, he bought a bucket of chum and prepared to bring Mr. Krabs back to life. He injected the chum into Mr. Krabs' shell, then injected the static electricity created by friction into Mr. Krabs' body. Soon, a miracle happened. But this Mr. Krabs looked a little mentally challenged, but that didn't matter. They could train him. Meanwhile, the real Mr. Krabs also discovered that his shell was missing. In order to make his date a success, Mr. Krabs had no choice but to go home and change clothes. Using his flexible movements, he successfully made his way out of the restaurant. Taking advantage of the cover of night, he quickly returned home and put on his suit. Meanwhile, SpongeBob took the fake Mr. Krabs to Mrs. Puff's house. Luckily, Mrs. Puff didn't notice anything unusual. Soon, the two arrived at a restaurant and started their romantic date. Mrs. Puff really liked the Mr. Krabs of today. Just as the two were about to kiss, the real Mr. Krabs suddenly appeared. His anger was so intense that it melted the glass. Just as he was about to confront the fake Mr. Krabs, SpongeBob and Patrick threw him out of the restaurant. After Squidward revealed the truth, they finally understood what had happened. Meanwhile, the real Mr. Krabs and the fake Mr. Krabs also started fighting. In the end, the real Mr. Krabs used his weight and crushed the fake Mr. Krabs into a puddle of goo. Only then did Mrs. Puff understand the truth. She quickly put Mr. Krabs' shell back on him and then went on a date with him. To steal the Krabby Patty's secret formula, Plankton directly squeezed his soul out of his body. Now, he could freely pass through any object, but what he didn't expect was ghosts don't have physical bodies, so he couldn't pick up the secret formula at all. As soon as he realized this, he completely broke down. Just then, a burst of laughter came from outside the safe. It turned out to be the Flying Dutchman. He made himself smaller. Then, he easily passed through the safe, picked up the secret formula, and started mocking Plankton. After seeing all this, Plankton asked to learn from the Flying Dutchman. The Flying Dutchman said Plankton had to learn the basics of becoming a ghost. The first lesson was shapeshifting. The Flying Dutchman demonstrated it first and told Plankton, as long as you imagine something scary, you can turn into it. Then it was Plankton's turn. With the others' help, he turned himself into a one-eyed demon. He barely passed the test. The second lesson was scaring people. The Flying Dutchman first gave Plankton a demonstration. Then Plankton started trying. He walked up to the mirror and suddenly screamed. As expected, he scared himself. The Flying Dutchman gave him a perfect score on the spot. The next lesson, the third lesson, was haunting. Squidward was lucky enough to become the target this time. Plankton successfully possessed Squidward's bed and took control of it. The bed started shaking from side to side. When Squidward woke up and saw this, his face turned pale with fear. He immediately crawled into the closet. Terrified, he started playing his clarinet because it sounded so terrible. Plankton rushed over and tried to take the clarinet away. He transformed into SpongeBob's appearance and scared Squidward unconscious. At this moment, Plankton also discovered that he could pick things up. He returned to the Krusty Krab. He picked up the secret formula and was about to leave, but the formula couldn't pass through the wall of the safe. It seemed that Plankton's plan had failed again. That day, SpongeBob was making delicious Krabby Patties in his own unique way. A health inspector kicked open the door and walked in. The device in his hand showed that someone inside was infected with a virus. He immediately placed the Krusty Krab under complete lockdown. The entire Krusty Krab instantly fell into chaos. Mr. Krabs hid inside his office. Plankton escaped from a bottle of soda, but he was quickly taken care of. In order to find the infected person, Mr. Krabs started checking everyone one by one. Just then, SpongeBob suddenly sneezed. Everyone was terrified. To avoid causing trouble for others, SpongeBob volunteered to lock himself inside the freezer. Before leaving, he even said goodbye to Squidward. To keep SpongeBob company, Patrick disguised himself as an infected person. Soon, he was locked inside the freezer. At this moment, Squidward felt a little itchy on his skin and was suspected of having the flu. Squidward was also locked inside the freezer. Mrs. Puff yawned, and Mr. Krabs immediately locked her inside the freezer. Pearl returned the money to Mr. Krabs, but Mr. Krabs suspected that she was infected with the virus, so he locked Pearl inside as well. At this moment, Squidward discovered the problem. Everyone who had been locked inside the freezer was healthy. That meant the only infected person could be Mr. Krabs. Everyone decided to catch the real infected person. They rushed out of the freezer, but soon, something unexpected happened. While chasing Mr. Krabs, Squidward and him both fell into the sewer. Their bodies were covered in filth. During the chaos, more and more people became covered in the dirty substance. The next day, the inspector opened the door of the Krusty Krab and found complete chaos inside. Everyone's bodies had become infected, especially Mr. Krabs, whose entire body had started to rot. They were all infected with a virus far more serious than the flu. In the end, the inspector quarantined the entire Krusty Krab. This was the first time SpongeBob breathed fresh air, and he almost ended up meeting his maker. A place without seawater is basically hell for ocean creatures. One day, SpongeBob met Sandy. At Sandy's invitation, he went to her house. Sandy sucked all the air out from outside the door, and SpongeBob started to dry up. When Sandy opened the metal door, SpongeBob looked like a fish that had left the water. Because he didn't want to embarrass himself in front of Sandy, he could only pretend to stay calm. So, while Sandy wasn't paying attention, SpongeBob drained all the water from the pool. Outside, Patrick was still constantly encouraging SpongeBob, telling him to keep going. But SpongeBob had already reached his limit. Even his hands had started to become dried out, while Sandy was arranging flowers. SpongeBob immediately stood up and tried to leave. He walked to the door, but he couldn't open it. To keep his promise with Patrick, SpongeBob bravely returned to the table. Just then, Sandy came back carrying a vase. SpongeBob's attention was completely drawn to the vase. When Sandy turned around to get some cookies, he immediately grabbed the vase and drank all the water inside. Seeing this, Patrick quickly ran inside. He loudly questioned SpongeBob, asking why he couldn't overcome even this little challenge. As he said that, he tried to take SpongeBob back to his seat, but soon, he realized something was wrong too. He quickly ran to the door and wanted to leave, but the two of them had already lost almost all their strength. They couldn't open the door at all. When Sandy came back, she discovered that SpongeBob and Patrick had become dehydrated. Sandy quickly took out a hose and put helmets on them. This helped them return to normal. Finally, Sandy brought some tea to share with them, but with the helmets on, they couldn't drink the tea. So Sandy simply put the tea bags inside their helmets. Did you know that when Squidward gets scared, he sprays out a huge amount of ink? One day, Patrick and SpongeBob were selling lemonade on the street. A curious customer drank the ink that Squidward had sprayed out, and he gave it a great review. So the two of them decided to start selling ink. To get more ink, Patrick used his already rotten body and rang the bell of wisdom. That's right, he planned to scare Squidward. His creepy appearance successfully scared Squidward. Just like that, Patrick successfully collected a bottle of ink, but there were too many customers, and that little bit of ink was nowhere near enough. So Patrick brought in a terrifying giant spider. Overwhelmed by fear, Squidward started spraying out ink non-stop. Soon, Patrick had collected 2 large cups of ink. As their business became wildly popular, Patrick built a terrifying haunted house. Squidward quickly fell into the trap. A creepy piece of music started playing. Squidward went forward to investigate. He got scared and started running around in panic. Unexpectedly, he saw the Krusty Krab 60 years in the future, and 60 years later, he still hadn't achieved financial freedom. He was still working as a cashier at the Krusty Krab. The extreme fear had an astonishing effect. In an instant, the boat was completely filled with ink. Squidward was so terrified that he crashed straight through the wall and escaped. That's when he saw SpongeBob and Patrick's stand. It turned out they had been selling his ink the whole time, so he immediately came up with a new idea. He set up his own stand and started selling ink. Just then, everyone finally realized that the drinks they had been drinking were actually Squidward's ink. They immediately rushed to Squidward's house and spit all the ink back out. To comfort Squidward, the two of them brought him a new flavored cookie. But what Squidward didn't know was that the cookies were actually made from spiders. Squidward stuck a pencil into SpongeBob's brain, erasing all of SpongeBob's memories about him. From that moment on, the two of them became the closest strangers. One night, a sleeping Squidward was awakened by a strange noise. He went downstairs to check, and sure enough, it was another one of SpongeBob's pranks. Today was their friendship anniversary. SpongeBob had put together an album containing all their memories, recording how the two of them first met. But Squidward didn't appreciate it at all. After seeing the photos, he became even angrier. He kicked SpongeBob out of his house. On the street, Squidward thought he had finally gotten rid of SpongeBob. Just as he let out a sigh of relief, SpongeBob's voice came from above his head. Squidward looked up in horror. A piano was hanging directly above him. The rope snapped, and the unlucky Squidward was crushed underneath. No matter where he went, he could always see SpongeBob's presence. So, driven crazy, he decided to erase every memory SpongeBob had of him. Late at night, Squidward secretly came to the pineapple house. Using the memory erasing pencil, he removed the memories of himself from SpongeBob's brain. The next morning, Squidward cautiously greeted SpongeBob. SpongeBob didn't recognize him at all. This made Squidward extremely happy. He shared everything with Mr. Krabs. But Mr. Krabs became furious. The Krabby Patty secret formula was connected to the memories between SpongeBob and Squidward. So Squidward had no choice but to take SpongeBob and search for their lost memories together. He relived all those moments where SpongeBob had tortured him, but SpongeBob still couldn't remember Squidward. Squidward had no other option. He could only choose an extreme method. Just as Squidward was about to jump into the lava, SpongeBob suddenly regained his memories of Squidward. But by then, it was already too late. Squidward had already fallen into the lava. Even worse, after regaining his memories, SpongeBob started tormenting Squidward all over again.